Hey guys, welcome to Wednesday. We are halfway through the week, and I just realized a couple of hours ago that the Winter Olympics start in 2 days. So here's a question to start off our morning. If you were a Winter Olympian, Dan and Sean, what sport would you play?
It's ice hockey, Miracle on Ice. That's still one of the great moments in U.S. sports history. I grew up around that, both playing, youth hockey and living not too far from Lake Placid in Connecticut. No doubt.
Skiing.
Nice. Skiing. I didn't go skiing until I was probably 28 years old, and I got stuck on a ski lift. And then when I finally got off of it, it hit me in the head and I fell down. So I don't think skiing is for me. But
Better than hitting a tree. Yep.
that is true.
It's a very dangerous sport. Yep.
Naturally, I would be a figure skater, of course.
I think that's perfect. You know what's interesting though, and again, way too not the rabbit hole to go down right now. When Dan said hockey and then I said skiing, immediately what came to my mind was I think there's a tell there. Like Dan wants to be part of a team sport. I'm a selfish little petty guy that wants to be in the category of winning the gold medal for myself. And I just thought
Same here. Mine is a solo. Well, I guess unless you do
you could do teams.
Yeah, you could do teams.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, guys, we've got a great show for you today. We're going to talk about Shutdown 2.0 ending and Shutdown 3.0 beginning at the end of next week. Very likely. We'll talk about the latest with the Clinton contempt discussion. They are coming to Capitol Hill in a couple of weeks, so mark your calendars. We'll tell you what to watch for and sort of the dynamics behind the scenes there. We'll talk about saving the SAVE Act. right now is super up in arms. Super.
I think I hear it on life support. Yep. It's on life support.
Super angry at John Thune, who is once again the bad guy for the base. We'll talk about voter problems on both sides of the aisle. DNC launching this new sort of listening tour for people who didn't turn out for them in 2024. And then we'll also talk about this juicy little Texas Senate drama, spicy little back and forth between Colin Allred, who pulled out of the race running in that primary, and James Tallarico, this fight they've been having since the weekend. But first, let's look at the day book. Let's look at the day book. 9 a.m., Tom Homan's going to be giving a news conference in Minnesota. JD Vance and Marco Rubio will be holding a meeting with 50 nations on China-free supply chains for critical minerals. At 10 a.m., Scott Bessent's going to be up testifying before the House Financial Services Committee, where the real question will be about his new friendship with Nicki Minaj and this little video he made with her yesterday, which did you guys see?
He made it at the Trump accounts.
Okay, it came out yesterday.
Also, Tom Homan's holding a press conference at 9 a.m. here, so we'll see here in just a few minutes if he has anything interesting to say.
Oh, yeah, I didn't. Yes, that's right. Right now. I just mentioned that, but didn't think about going to him live. So if any big news happens to that, flag it for us in the chat and we will.
Our correspondents are on the ground.
Perfect. 11 a.m., the president's going to be doing a TV interview with none other than NBC. 1:15, First Lady's going to meet with an American Israeli hostage that was freed. At 4 o'clock, the president's going to be participating in his policy meeting. And then 7 o'clock tonight, Federal Reserve Governor Cook will be speaking at the Economic Club of Miami. Before we jump in, guys, though, do me a favor, send the link right now, the live link, to 5 either friends or family members, people who you know are interested in politics. Tell them to watch. We are looking to boost our live numbers, and what a better way to do it than send it in real time. I think, Sean, are you doing it right now, Sean?
Yeah, I do what you say. I'm
very good at Where's your phone? So do that. It helps us get our numbers up, and we really appreciate you doing that. First, a word from our sponsor.
Yeah, and by the way, for those who ask how many numbers do we want, the answer is always more. There's just never enough.
Billions.
Yes, exactly. All right, so speaking of cozy earth, yesterday a lot of you chuckled when I talked about you don't want to personally be shut down around Valentine's Day because you forgot. Thankfully, I have never forgotten a Valentine's Day. Have either of you ever forgotten a birthday, anniversary, or Valentine's Day?
No.
Simple yes or no
This
question.
does not surprise me, Dan.
No.
This does
Okay. All right. Well, listen, if you want a surefire thing, sometimes the best gifts are both for your partner, spouse, but also that make you happy. And what better thing to do than share Cozy Earth, get your partner some great pajamas. Right now, Cozy Earth has a great special going on. Buy one, get one free. Use our code HUDDLE BOGO, BOGO. But also at the same time, things like the blankets, the candles. There are a lot of different ways that you can go. Basically do all your shopping at Cozy Earth and make your partner and you very happy. So go to CozyEarth.com and use our codes either for the pajamas or in general.
Awesome. Thanks to Cozy Earth. Let's jump right in to the conversation. So the president last night signed legislation to end this short little shutdown, partial shutdown that we've seen this week. But as we have said on the show, the real fight is only just beginning. Hill Republicans have now ruled out not one, but two of the asks Senate Democrats floated for them in terms of reforming ICE. The first one was to say, no, we are not in favor of mandating an end to face masks for agents. And now GOP leaders, including the speaker, are pouring cold water all over this idea to require judicial warrants to enter people's homes. So let's just start there, Sean. How much of this, because I know you talked to a bunch of Republicans and you had Ron John on your show just a couple days ago, how much of this is an actual red line versus negotiating tactic here?
It's a red line until it's not. And what I mean by that is we saw with the shutdown, when President Trump decides that he's had enough and he puts his weight down and says to the House members or whom, the Senate in this, whatever, and says, we're going to do this, they'll cave. But I do think that even he recognizes that a couple of these things are really an attempt to defang the efforts to keep the country safe and to keep people out of the country. So, as I said, there is some room for compromise when it comes to identifying officers. As some of the folks on the right that I've talked to said, it's funny, you guys want to take the masks off these folks, then pay for their private security when they get doxxed or whatever. So they're willing. There are some options here, if you will, but they're not going to give on this stuff. It's not going to happen.
Dan, based on what you have seen, how your own party has reacted to some of these talks in recent days, how much do you think that they're willing to negotiate right now? Or do you feel like they have really drawn a hard line, especially in the House, and they're just not going to come off of these points?
Well, I think there's two different things. There's the House and the Senate. And
Right.
in the House, look, the reality of being in the House is you're in the minority. You really have no power. You have some because of the small Republican majority. But at the end of the day, if Republicans stick together, you can scream all you want. I think the biggest thing for the party here is that we do not look unreasonable and crazy in this debate. And what I mean by that is, I think what you're going to hear is the Democratic Party getting pressed to say, do you acknowledge that ICE should exist and ICE has a role to play kind of in our country? And the common sense says yes and yes, right? But I think the party is going to have to try to get on top of that to cut that off, because if this comes down to a shutdown over whether you need warrants to enter American homes, we will win that fight all day, every day, in 6 ways to Sunday, because the idea that an administrative agency can issue their own warrants is absurd. I mean, it's just flat out absurd. Even J.D. Vance backpedaled on it because he knew how ridiculous it was.
Well,
so,
he didn't backpedal. He said that if it's ruled that's
of
not
course,
enough,
he said they will change, but it wasn't we have absolute authority, you need to go buzz off, which J.D. Vance has done in the past when the administration feels very confident. So again, we need to acknowledge that ICE needs to exist. ICE has a role to play, and then have a battle over common sense reforms. I don't know if the mask will end up, that is one where I think the public is a little more wishy-washy. I get Democrats' arguments. Police officers don't wear masks 99% of the time. So, the FBI agents, when they show up, don't wear masks all the time. So why is ICE being treated separately? But I think that's a trickier, that I get it. The DEA does sometimes wear masks. It's a trickier argument, but warrants and body cameras,
Well, body cameras frankly, the funny thing about this debate was Marty gave away the body cameras.
Just in Minnesota
right.
For now. Just
right.
for now.
But I mean, my point is that that's from a negotiating standpoint, we gave one a sense of.
You gave half of it. You haven't done the rest yet.
Right.
But I agree. I
You're
agree.
not going to have a tough time getting that one out. And then, as
Right.
I said, there are some. That's why the Republican position, to Dan's point, I think in some of these is pretty reasonable, which is, okay, I get what you're trying to do here. We can meet you halfway with another way of achieving your goal. Do Democrats push it too far? And that's where they've got to
Well, and I think this is the real question. Who can define victory to their base that's acceptable? Because if Trump says to the base, look, and I agree with you, Sean, on body cameras, they're kind of there, right? Now do you say, look, all right, on warrants, like we're, at the end of the day, we don't want a Democratic, administration breaking doors down with administrative warrant, like fine, and draw a line on the mask. And can we say to our base, look, we just got them on body cams. Now we're probably going to get them on warrants. Guys, in this construct, meaning Trump's president, we don't control the, House or Senate. That is victory. Be happy.
Speaking of the bases, in a sign of just how difficult this is going to be, Republicans on the Hill are telling reporters, leaking to reporters, that they want the White House to take the lead on this. Like, they don't want to do it. We don't want to touch this because they know that they make a deal with Democrats. Some on the right are just going to be super pissed off and they are going to come after them. If the president makes the deal, however, the base will think twice about complaining, right, Sean? I mean, like, just
well, yeah, that's probably 60% of it. The other 40 is we don't want to make a deal and then have you change the terms of it. So if you make the deal, we'll go along with it. You're right about the political sensitivities, but there's also an aspect of we don't want to cut a deal and then have you come in and say, well, I want to change the parameters. If you cut it, we're in.
Here's the question, though. Which senior White House official takes the lead on this? Because depending on who it is, it's a very different negotiation, right? Is it Stephen Miller, who's more like the hardline immigration hawk, et cetera? Or is it more like a James Blair, who oversees congressional affairs, right? He also is a political-minded person and very probably sensitive to some of the politics on this. I'm very curious. What do you think?
Well, and can I ask, as part of that, Sean, your opinion of the Wall Street Journal big profile on Stephen Miller? Was that profile pushed by somebody who maybe doesn't like Stephen to say, as we're entering all of this, that guy plays to your worst instincts and causes you trouble? I'm just wondering if that was done by, a little bit of a silent knife with somebody to push him out.
Have you seen that
in this conversation?
Yeah. I mean, I read it. I don't. That one to me was not as. I get called a lot for different profiles because of knowing people in the jobs and like. I didn't deal with that one, but that one didn't stand out to me as somebody was pushing it. My point is there are two types. Ones that, and Rachel knows this, that get assigned, like, hey, do a profile on Caroline Leavitt. There's one going on some DOD officials right now that I've helped with. The Boston Globe did one that came out over the weekend on Caroline. That normally I can tell, like, somebody's driving the train and saying the knives are out, or it's like, this was assigned to me. That got the sense of that was assigned. It wasn't, there wasn't enough background quotes of like sticking the daggers in.
Well, it also, just very quickly before you go into who will take the lead at the White House for these talks, like that profile, it very much like made Miller look like he had jumped the gun on things when there has been reporting, okay, but whether or not you think he should have gone out there and tweeted what he did or not, which clearly he shouldn't have because of all the blowback. There has been reporting that he was told something from CBP about what happened.
Yeah, but
this is inaccurate. That story glosses over that.
Right.
It doesn't mention any of that. It makes him look really, really bad.
Right, but here's the point, though, and this is what and I don't want to jump on this, but I had John Solomon on the show yesterday, and even John Solomon, who is a diehard supporter of the agenda, was not favorable of how this went down. And my point is, that's not your. I mean, like I in 30 years of doing this, like. Your job isn't to just go, okay, I got some ground intel and I'm going to tweet it out. That's not how it should work. So I actually didn't. The way that was presented in the Wall Street Journal, I think was probably as fair as it could, being that that's your job is not to take intel that you get a phone call from and say, here's the deal. You wait for the assessment. I mean, like.
Not me sounding more sympathetic to Stephen Miller than Sean Spicer.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I actually just, like, I thought that was the most favorable way that you could frame.
That's so funny. Okay, who's going to take the lead? Who's going to take the lead at the White House?
I think the one person we haven't talked about that, again, part of it is you got to have somebody who's got, I think James Blair would definitely be smart in the mix. Like, he's no wallflower, but he's also well-respected and knowledgeable. And he has a relationship with a lot of folks on the Hill. I think the other person could be Susie herself and getting involved in helping to coordinate the meetings, because you want that sense of gravitas that would get brought by the chief of staff.
That's really interesting. Susie herself. And
or JD. I mean, that's the other thing.
Well, that was the name I was going to bring up,
Yeah.
who is not, he's been very quiet the
Does
last
he
few
want
days
this
on
job,
this
though?
topic.
Oof.
If I'm running in 28 and I do not, I mean, speaking of Kamala Harris, you know, being the border czar, you don't want to deal with this. You don't want your name anywhere near it.
No, for sure. Last thought on this before we move on, because I don't know when we'll talk about it again, but like, if it comes to another partial shutdown, just a reminder, folks, that this will just be one agency that shuts down, not to minimize that, because obviously FEMA is in DHS and like that's important when you have a bunch of snowstorms, et cetera.
TSA.
But it sounds like, TSA, good one. It sounds like, you know, the One Big Beautiful Bill did include a lot of money for DHS. Now, do you guys know, is that just for ICE?
Well, and also just from what I was told by some folks on Capitol Hill, they believe that money was for like hardware, infrastructure, weapon. I mean, not for manpower. So you could, in theory, you could try to the way that DOD did this during the last shutdown, but they didn't have a sense of confidence that it took care of the people. And why that matters, because I don't think there's, from the back and forth that I saw today in our discussion, there is no way that they're going to come to a deal before whatever it is, February, before Valentine's Day.
No way.
No way. So it's going to happen. I can't believe Dan seems to be probably the more optimistic.
I don't know. I don't know. I hear you both, and that like both sides are so dug in, but I also think both sides, and I know this from some Democrats, there is a little bit of a fear that you don't want to be shutting airports down and everything around spring break. Like you got to be careful, right?
Yeah, I'm
got to be careful.
I'm going to Disney World, guys. So
maybe not. Yeah, you better get a rent a car. No, I'm joking.
But that's the thing, is that I just want to DC has this thing where like everybody expects it to go to the 11th hour and then get solved. That's how it works. And we've seen the last couple of times with the shutdowns. I don't think that that's a given anymore. Yeah. I don't feel good about where we are. And to Dan's point, I would be very careful if I'm Democrats, because you've got Secret Service, FEMA, Coast Guard. There's a lot of stuff in there that is you forget sometimes all of the stuff that got encompassed in DHS and the reorg. So I'm just saying, like, if the Republicans could actually get their act together and message everything that shut down and how vulnerable the country would be during that period, they might be able to come out.
Well, but I mean, the flip side is it's an issue that's an albatross now around your neck. So, I mean, the politics are on our side of the macro. The problem is the micro on our, right? So this is why I don't think it's a given this goes on forever. I think both sides have an incentive to try to declare victory and move and get this in the rearview mirror. Trump does not want to be at the State of the Union talking about warrants. He doesn't, in my opinion.
Well, or to your point, you don't look. I think that's a good point, right? It's not even just that. Like, if you don't have government funding and everybody's talking about ICE, and this and that, and you're trying to give a speech to get people to focus on affordability, the economy, the way forward, and you've got a bunch of Democrats standing up, chanting stuff, holding, which they will. They'll obstruct. I mean, that's not that kills the narrative.
And it's an issue you're underwater 20 points on. I mean, you just have to say it. So, like, anyway. All right, we need to move.
Can I just?
Let's move on, guys. Let's talk about.
Can I make one more quick? Like, I would just say this. You brought this up. I want to flag this for folks. When we go to the Winter Olympics, it's like a black hole of politics.
Oh, good call.
And I just want to say, like, you threw it out there at the beginning, and I'm glad you did. But like, understand that like breaking through in the next 2 weeks, when there's going to be an obsession talking about every, what the gold medal count is and all this stuff. We'll see. But traditionally, that's been like going into convention mode during, every 4 years.
Who does it benefit? Who does it benefit?
I think it kind of benefits
Democrats,
politics and focusing on the Olympics.
I mean, on the one level, it could break our momentum. On the other hand, we have momentum. So,
But I think it's like a timeout in football. Like, you don't want someone to slow you. You're charging down the field. You don't want to stop the game.
True.
Okay, let's talk about the Clintons. So mark your planners, guys. The Clintons are coming to the Hill to testify. Hillary will be here on February 26th. Bill, February 27th. Let's talk a little bit about what that looks like. The Clintons, Dan, sort of as we predicted, want open testimony, right? They want to do this in public. James Comer, the oversight chairman, has said, he's open to it, but he wants their first conversation to be a private deposition. Just like start by explaining to people, why does this even matter, whether it's public or private?
Well, look, and traditionally depositions are obviously done in private. That is how it's always done. The challenge is, as we all know, that anything that happens in private in an investigation of this magnitude is usually public, if not within seconds to certain reporters via text. It is leaked out and you set a narrative, right? And then the accused, so to speak, is responding to a narrative that starts, like a wildfire. So the Clintons want this in public so that they can, people can see it in real time. They're allies. If you remember the Benghazi hearing, the Clintons had a plan. They were ready to go. They were ready to start. I can't believe I'm going to say this, memes and other things in real time. Like for one day, Hillary was like nimble online in 2016. So you want it in public. I also think the interesting thing for the Democratic Party is, can you create a joint defense fund, so to speak, where everyone on the committee is organized, you have plans, they know the testimony the Clintons are going to give, and people like AOC and others become the tip of your PR spear. Right now, the party's divided. Yeah. And so the interesting thing for the Clintons is you've got to get everybody on board and everyone's got to play ball. And if I'm AOC and I want to potentially run statewide in New York City, I do not want the Clintons as my enemies. I want them as my friends. So,
because you're right. Usually in these big investigations, it's not just like the minority almost like coordinates with some of the witnesses.
Oh, and the majority does.
They absolutely do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let me. This is where I'll put my former communications director for the House Oversight Committee hat on. There's just so the audience understands the difference here. Everybody has seen a hearing, right? So the chairman gets an opening statement, the witness gives an opening statement, and then generally on the House side, it's 5 minutes. And you go alternate parties, Republican, Democrat, 5 minutes apiece. They say their piece. They usually ask some stupid gotcha question. The witness says, let me answer. I mean, it's whatever. Okay. So you go back and forth. Everyone gets 5 minutes, usually negotiated with the chairman. It's in public. The deposition is a very different beast. The reason it's closed is that it's usually not, it's staff led. So the majority and minority counsel will treat it like we'll sit there and close doors and say, Mr. Clinton, did you, blah, 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 blah. Oh, no. And then they follow up. So it is treated like a legal proceeding. You have a counsel and they divide the time 1 hour each, or they come to terms what that is. But you actually can have a train of thought. So instead of, you guys have all seen the hearings and there's never, it's a joke. I mean, no one learns anything. You try to do a gotcha moment with the witness. They really don't ever answer a question. The member usually gives a speech, not ask questions. The deposition is actually meant so that the counsels of each side can go down rabbit holes and say, well, you just said, Mr. Clinton, that you never saw him. Let me show you this piece of paper. Do you recall this? Yes, I do. Well, what was going through your mind? So
it's a different form of gotcha.
Right. It's much more serious.
It's much more serious. And like I said, not that the members don't from time to time, in my experience, they can pipe in, they can do things, but it's usually the chairman only or his designee or her designee. And it's not, it's a given period of time so that you can actually get information and go down and back and forth and exchange information. And the witness, it's not meant to cut the witness off. They're not saying, okay, stop talking. It's, can you explain this? What did you mean when you said this? Do you identify this picture? So it's completely different dynamic. In this case, at least from my understanding, the agreement is that it will be videotaped so that you will be able to see it, but you're not having a bunch of members looking for their 30-second soundbite.
And it will also be after the cherry picked items are already released and like at the top of, every news website. You know what I mean? Like, well, that's they're going to cherry pick their own favorite passages and leak them to the reporters. I mean, this is why depositions are a reporter's paradise, right? You have if you're well connected with the committee that is investigating, like literally they leak to you in real time, as Dan was saying. And then, your stories are going viral online. But
I think from a PR standpoint,
The video won't be released like right away, though. It won't be released probably for several days.
I think, and everything Sean said is true, and it was a great kind of walkthrough. But I think the problem for the Republicans is two things. One, Comer has a history of embarrassing himself in these hearings. So if it's in public, and Comer, as you say, Sean, it's not staff who tends to be well trained. They're young, they're spry, they're ready to go. But a kind of older committee chairman bumbling around, it creates an opening. The second thing is, if this fight turns into have the testimony in public or private, most Americans will always say public, always. Just, it's the knee jerk. So the Republicans now have to be careful, because if you start digging in and you start saying no, then like you start losing a little high ground. But at the same time, Comer's history on this stuff is horrific.
Well, and Dan brings up a good point, Sean, because
that's two today. I have two good points.
Well, but the first one in particular, I'm thinking, and that was actually my next question, was like when I covered oversight on the Hill, there was always this tension between Darrell Issa, who was the chairman of the Oversight Committee, or Jim Jordan, who was doing investigations on justice, and the GOP leadership, who were worried about them looking too aggressive and overstepping. Like, this is risky for Republicans.
Oh, listen,
how do they avoid those?
I mean, look, if you go back when I would start on the Hill, I mean, during Whitewater, Newt was speaker and literally removed a very senior staffer. Like, no names mentioned there. You can Google it right now and find out. But like, it was a very public. When I was the comms director during Whitewater. It was the leadership is like in there every day. What do you? I mean, like they're like a hawk in there, because they know how dangerous this is in terms of subpoenas and what comes out and what doesn't, how this can reflect. So, I mean, I don't get the sense that Johnson's staff, they've not.
No.
So I don't think you're going to get that the same way you might have in the past.
Yeah.
But look, I largely, the big thing, and Dan brought this up a few days ago, like, I'm still worried. You saw the president's comments. He said, I feel basically I'm a little sympathetic to the Clintons, and I've always liked Hillary Clinton. And the president understands that, like, the precedent of this is not good.
Yeah. And I'll just say, like, I'm going to take a bow. The other press is starting to pick up that point. Yeah, that the press that we talked about a while ago, and I wrote a Substack about on Monday. Go look at the end of the Clinton statement the other day. Talk about future president, like the precedent and future presidents, like folks, Donald Trump and Melania and others. This is all about setting the precedent.
Yep, I'm
the precedent for the president.
Yes, there you go. Two last thoughts on this, and then we'll move on. I don't even know that the speaker would have the political bandwidth in the Capitol to tell Comer like what to do or not. I mean, if the White House wants to control this, it's going to have to be them that try to like hold.
Well, and that's where, if I were them, I would get in and say, like these guys are very savvy. You mentioned James Blair before.
Yeah,
they're thinking of that. And frankly, I would, if I were JD Vance, because he would theoretically be in office, potentially during you want to make sure that you're not the one who's having to deal with this in 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 years. So what do you say to Comer? Like, hey, we think that you should agree to it in this fashion, because this is what we want the precedent to be when we might have to face the music.
Well, and remember, Comer on the Biden stuff got savaged by the right for fumbling those Biden investigations. He did. I mean, that's the other problem. Like, he has yet to show he can meet a moment like this. Doesn't mean he won't, but he's got a bad history.
Well, he had a good week for now. I mean, this was a big victory for him. He got the Clintons to cave, so let him have his moment, Dan.
Okay.
Okay, let's move on to the SAVE Act. So Senate Majority Leader John Thune, once again, at the center of the right's fury. He told reporters that no, he is not going to be going nuclear, getting rid of the filibuster to try to pass the SAVE Act. Just a reminder for anyone who's not familiar. Again, this is this bill that requires voter ID to register to vote. Very popular, not just with Republicans, but with a lot of voters, 80% of voters, according to polling. But Democrats are super against it and say they absolutely want to go there.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we talked about this a little bit earlier this week. Anna Paulina Luna, a Florida Republican, she had been one of the final holdouts on this spending agreement. She went to the White House, spoke to the president, apparently spoke to John Thune, and came out and said she believed she had an agreement with the Senate Majority Leader that he was going to make sure this thing passed. She tells, a lot of people publicly about this. They get excited on the right. And then all of a sudden, Thune comes out and says, actually, I never made that promise. And here's the political reality. Let's play the first element. John Thune.
Point in the realm in the Senate is floor time. There's a finite amount of it, and we have a lot of things we have to do. There's a housing bill that's awaiting action, hopefully a market structure bill, possibly permitting reform, farm bill, highway bill. You can go right down the list. Russia sanctions, there are a whole bunch of things that could be teed up for action on the floor of the Senate. And so you have to make some judgments, and the conference will have a conversation about that. I've committed to that we will talk about that idea. As I said, we will vote on the SAVE Act, but exercising or triggering a talking filibuster has ramifications, implications that I think everybody needs to be aware of. So we will have those discussions, but that's obviously ties the floor up for an indefinite amount of time with not only unlimited debate,
we can get out of this.
Yes, yeah, let's get out of this.
I have to say, the only thing missing was, does anyone have like a post office they want? Nate, can somebody bring something forward so we don't have to do this?
John Thune saying, we don't have time for that. How's that going with the right?
That was the Senate equivalent of, I think you're a really nice guy, but I don't want to date you. I mean, that was literally the biggest, we've got, he was looking at Shelley Moore Capital. Like we've got something grass growing. We've got to watch the grass grow. We've got a birthday party for one of the staffers. And we've got a lot of, and also the planning party committee has got to meet on Friday with the HOA that was horrible. And I think it's another sellout of the priorities of the base. And I hope the House guys don't let them, get off the hook on this. But the idea that permitting reform, my God, I'm sure it's important. It's probably important to a lot of folks. And it is. Just in terms of the regulatory agenda. I get it. But are you kidding me?
Too, actually.
Huh?
It's bipartisan too, actually. But
right. But like,
they're all about bipartisan.
We don't have any time. We've got to do nothing, and we've got to go home. And that was the lamest thing. It was pathetic.
To be clear, he said he did say they are going to vote on it, but it's just going to get shut down procedurally.
After we do the other stuff.
All right.
Eventually.
The best line in there was, and Russia sanctions, which, by the way, have been on the table for, I think, 14 months now. It's like Tuesday.
Would you say, Thune, though, just in terms of how he is viewed by the base, Sean, since he's in the spotlight, look, he's not Mitch McConnell resented, right? It's not the same level of resentment that the base had for Mitch McConnell.
Not yet.
I was going to say, do you think he ultimately will end up there just because that's the nature of being?
Well, the difference is that right now, President Trump still speaks very favorably of his relationship with him, what he's doing. I think once, as I've said before, in a lot of things, once you cross that Rubicon, it's hard to come back.
Yeah.
I think so. This is going to be interesting to me to see how long that goes. And I think the president's going to get more and more pressure. He's clearly publicly and personally supportive of the SAVE Act. I think it's going to come to a point where it's like, why is this not getting done? So I think that if I were Thune, I'd find some way of getting it scheduled for a vote and cutting this out because people want this. There's no excuses. It's just not, to me, it's going to come. And it's just, you're kicking the can further and further and getting a lot more resentment and the base a lot more pissed off. And if I can tie two random things together, you think about the comments on the Hyde Amendment and then the comments on the Second Amendment. The base is getting a little pissy with some of the fundamentals of conservative philosophy, like what we believe in, very pro-life, very supportive of the Second Amendment. And now you're saying like, hey, we don't have time for the SAVE Act. Like you've got to start doing stuff that get the base energized going into a midterm when Donald Trump's not on the ballot, right? He can get people fired up, but they need a reason to go out there and vote. And if you're Congress and you keep crapping on the agenda, you're not going to inspire a lot of motivation for people to go out, knock on doors, make phone calls, and put up yard signs.
Speaking of base enthusiasm.
Hold on. We do have to say the reason that Thune does not want to bring this up is there is a very significant part of the Republican conference that is loath to put the federal government in the middle of elections because it's a state's issue. And it has been the Republican Senate that has fought against Democratic efforts for 30 years to bring the federal. No, Sean, I get it. I totally get your argument. And I think there would be a sizable number of Democrats that would vote for it at the end of the day. I do. But the problem is there are all these Senate Republicans. Mitch McConnell has been at the forefront of this, who say the federal government needs to stay out of this stuff. And suddenly the federal government is becoming the solution to a lot of Republican ills. We're going to take the gun. It's crazy.
Look, this may be part of a messaging issue on our side. That's fine. But that's like saying that driver's licenses are being federalized. We require real ID right now. That's a federal driven.
States determine that stuff. Yes.
Right. But they have to meet federal standards, right? So a real ID in Delaware is the same standard as a real ID in Virginia. Okay. It is now a nationalized standard. Telling people they have to have a proof of citizenship is not nationalizing an election. I don't buy that. That's very different than saying you have to be open from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. States can still set the terms of their elections. That's in the Constitution. But to require a proof of citizenship is not federalizing an election. It's
sure,
just not.
It's overriding state. It's overriding what each state decides they want to do. I mean, that is it at the end of the day. Democrats for years said we should, step in Alabama and Florida. We should have a set.
There's a difference. You're not requiring every state to prove that you're a U.S. citizen is not nationalizing an election.
Literally one regulation out of one regulation.
Every state determines what is eligible.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Stop. Hold on. Just let me play a quick little exercise. If let's say Maryland right now said, and some of these counties are doing it in local elections. Okay. Yep. So I think it's Tacoma Park near where, like a couple of these places are saying you don't have to be a citizen to vote in our local election. Okay. If they allowed that in Congress and said, okay, great. When there's an election for U.S. Senate, and does the federal government have any say in that? If we said that non-citizens could vote for who your congressional representative,
Sean,
just answer the question. I'm asking you.
What can the federal government overrule Tacoma Park?
So Maryland says that we say that anybody that's in Maryland, whether you're a U.S. citizen or not, can vote in every election in Maryland.
The federal law is you have to be a U.S. citizen to vote. So there you go. So Sean, there's a law, and then Maryland puts together what it wants to do. Like that is what we have in this country. I mean, again, as a Democrat,
80% of Americans disagree with that argument.
Well, look, great. As I have said repeatedly, as a Democrat who thinks that there are a lot of issues with our voting system, I would love the federal government to get involved in nationalizing and standardizing elections. You want one standard, we may have others.
It's not a standard, Dan, to say a standard is saying that you have to be 5'6", or that it has to open at 6 a.m., or the machines have to be calibrated. No one's saying that. They're saying that you actually have to prove that if the criteria is you have to be a U.S. citizen, that there has to be proof of it. It's already
a standard,
which
is a standard.
Okay, let's move on. Let's talk about the Dem problems on the base side in not down in Texas. Actually, this is nationwide. So I just lost my place here because you guys got
so there's
here we go. So the DNC is launching a listening tour aimed at Democratic voters who turned out in 2020 but stayed home in 2024. Here's my problem with this, Dan. I mean, the DNC is not exactly known for admirable self-reflection, right? They buried the 2024 autopsy. So what happens when they do, this survey and it comes back and says, actually, voters just really didn't like Kamala, so they decided not to show up? Are they going to bury that too?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. They did the survey in partnership with other people. This is their, quote, solution to the survey, which is that 1 million plus Democrats who voted in 20 stayed home in 24, which is true. The issue is that they're ducking the main issue, which is, and some people have made these points in some of the press stories as part of this rollout, which is, it's not that the 1.5 million voters weren't being communicated with. It's not that they did not hear what we were saying. They did hear. They just didn't like the candidate. And they didn't like what they were being sold as a reason to vote. And that's the elephant in the room. So you can try to put lipstick on the pig and sell people, well, we actually just didn't communicate with them, shame on us, but that's just not true. So this is one of the many kind of Ken Martin jokes that everyone in the party just rolls their eyes and laughs about. It's a problem. Yeah. He's a problem.
I'm going to tie this actually in with our next topic, since it's, Democrat sort of drama continued. Colin Allred, who obviously was running for Senate in Texas, pulls out of the race when Jasmine Crockett jumped in. He endorsed her last night for this primary, and this comes right after he got in this tiff over the weekend with James Tallarico, who's also in the primary, over what he suggested were racist or race-baiting comments. Let's bring that up.
I understand that James Tallarico had the temerity and the audacity to say to a black woman that he had signed up to run against a mediocre black man, meaning me, not a formidable, intelligent black woman, meaning Jasmine Crockett. Let me just break this down into a few segments here. First of all, let me just give you some free advice, James. If you want to compliment black women, just do it. Just do it. Don't do it while also tearing down a black man, okay? We've seen that play before. We're sick and tired of it. We're tired of folks using praise for black women to mask criticism for black men. That's not good for our community. It's not good. It doesn't work, and we know what you're doing. Let me just say to all the young black men out there, all the young men who come from tough background, struggle growing up, who maybe think that someday you want to put yourself forward as a leader in your community. It's going to have haters like this are going to show up.
Really interesting here, Dan. I mean, look, I get that Tallarico hurt his feelings here, and maybe that's too simple of a way to describe it. But like, Colin Allred has long been considered more sort of pragmatic in the party. He's got to know what it takes to win Texas. Like, this seems very personal. And like, I guess, is he putting the personal drama ahead of winning Texas?
Yeah, I mean, whenever somebody does something like this, you have to ask, first off, like, what happened? And you said Tallarico was talking to a like influencer weeks ago about the kind of state of his race. Like, I started running against Allard and now I'm running against Crockett. And so the reference was to, I kind of was running against a candidate who was right? And he's a black man. And now I'm running against kind of a, hot base loving, like hot as in like the base loves her, black woman, right? It's a very different set of dynamics. And he was walking the journalist through. So you ask yourself, why would Allard do this? First off, it's disgraceful and outrageous what he is doing. One, this is total jealousy. He was the star of Democrats in Texas. Hey, if we're going to win it back, like it's always been our, Charlie Brown with the football, this guy could do it. And now people don't talk about him. The second is, this is pure race politics within our party. Who is Crockett struggling with? Black men, right? Black men historically with black women, it's been an interesting dynamic. He is trying to pull them back over to Crockett, who he endorsed last night, by splitting them off. He raised this issue to then kind of trash talk Tallarico, to try to punch and say, oh, he's trying to divide us. He's talking bad about black men. Like, in other words, you should be with Crockett. And coming after Saturday, when for the first time and probably since Ann Richards, Democrats are actually saying, like, could we really maybe win in Texas? Things have to go our way on the Republican side. To come out and pull this stunt, it's disgraceful. I hope he pays a price in the party in the future.
Sean, you guys must be loving this after getting a bunch of like, it's whew.
It's fascinating to me. I mean, frankly, the interesting thing about it is I personally believe that if you ever even thought you had a shot in Texas, Jasmine Crockett is not the horse to bet on. I mean, I think that, but I'll leave that to the Democrats to decide. It's great because
he knows that. He's like,
of course.
But I also think that it's like if you get out, you want the person, you want that person to win. He endorsed Crockett, so obviously he needs to show that he's got some stick when it comes to who he's supporting. But I love this.
Well, and here's the problem too, which is that, and this has always been an issue in the Democratic Party. The black and the brown communities have never really gotten along, right? They both have always kind of vied for dad's attention, so to speak, to say like, hey, focus on us and you should make investments in our community and get out the vote and everything. And I think that Allard knows this divide. So it is really hard for us to win a general election. Let's say Paxton's the nominee. Republicans are divided. They're frustrated. Talrico wins. We need the Black and the brown communities together. We can't be spending time, money, and energy trying to mend this fight that a fellow Democrat started. It's crazy.
And just a reminder, primaries in what, a month now?
Yeah.
Well, that by the way, that's going to be fascinating on both sides. Watching how this thing plays out.
And I believe that early voting, which of course all Republicans hate, starts in 2 weeks.
What? Just last thing here before we go to questions, Dan. Who do you think wins in this primary still? Is it Talrico or does?
Yeah, he does.
Yeah. Okay.
I think so.
Yeah.
As of now.
Okay, let's take some questions. Okay, from X. In terms of the Clintons' request, have there ever been live depositions before for everyone to see? It wouldn't be called a deposition, right? Yeah. It would be called hearing.
No, you could have a live deposition.
Oh, I'm sorry. Maybe I mistook live for public. What is live? Of course, they're all live. What is that?
I was gonna say it depends what your definition of
no. What I think my guess is what Curious Observer here is asking is, have you ever done a deposition out in the public? Yeah. We back, and I'm trying to remember when I was I believe that we would, and I obviously it's been, I mean, I was there in 98. That dates me, but I think there are, so as I said, the difference is generally staff leading the thing. There were hearings where staff counsel, where they would yield the time to the councils to do it. So the staff, the majority and minority counsel would sit at the dais and ask questions. I can't remember if we labeled it a hearing or a deposition. I think it was a hearing.
They called them hearings. And in the first Trump impeachment, they did it all the time, Sean, where they would have, when they brought all those witnesses in from state.
Well, the impeachment, just to be clear, that has its own set of, because again, I was for Clinton first. There is a procedure for that that's very specific to impeachment. But in terms of House Oversight Committee, we would I mean, back in the day, I remember the majority and minority counsel would get yielded time. It was still under the guise, I believe, of a hearing. So I don't know that there's ever been a deposition per se that was live where the council's asked and the members just sat there. Because the other thing that's just is for a hearing, obviously members come in, sit at their seats, and then wait their turn. For a deposition, it's usually in one of the conference rooms in the back.
I'm sure they could write some committee rules and let the councils.
Oh my gosh, it's processed in the House. It's whatever the majority wants it.
I was going to say,
they want it to be. Right? Look, this is all politics. This is all this is. The Republicans want to try to humiliate the Clintons and get them in public, and the Clintons are very well aware of what's happening. Yeah. And they, basically the parties decided, fine, we'll play ball because our big fish is sitting at 1,600 today and will be out of office in 3 years.
Really quick follow-up question.
Before
we take another question, the Clintons said they want to testify in public, and Comer says, okay, let's do it in private, and then I'm open to doing it in public. The Clintons are not going to want to come back and do a second thing in public, right?
Because it's all about the narrative.
Yeah.
Right. So the way this works is if it wasn't apparent to just at home, let's say Democrats have the control and Sean Spicer's brought in, right? They would leak to Rachel Maddow and Jen Psaki. And so MS Now would run headlines, right? Picked up by the New York Times. Everyone is responding to what MS Now has put up. On the Republican side, it is amazing how my friends on 6th Avenue somehow wind up getting information, and Sean Hannity and others are putting it out. And again, the narrative is set, right? So what you're trying to do by going out in public from the beginning is to kind of not allow that where somebody leaks something totally out of context. Again, both parties do it. We're as guilty as anybody, but that's what you're trying to prevent.
Let's take another one. Okay. Ooh, here's a good one. Mark asks, should Trump also get a subpoena to testify about Epstein, or is Comer just political? Clinton testified when he was president. Who wants to take that one? I mean, clearly it's not going to happen, but it's a good question. Fair question.
The interesting thing is when Trump was subpoenaed out of office about January 6th, They filed a lawsuit. Ultimately, the committee investigating backed down and withdrew the subpoena. So Trump ultimately never kind of came to it. Look, again, I've said this before. If a Dem is president and Dems control the House, they absolutely will subpoena, I believe, both Trumps on this topic. This is not a marriage issue where you can't testify against your spouse. So both parties, this is why I'm surprised the White House is letting this happen. I'm stunned.
Anything for you there, Sean?
No, but to Dan's point, we'll be interested to see if there's a little behind the scenes about why don't you let them do it this way? And because they are thinking about a precedent going forward. Also, I mean, you can also be gambling, which is, do we really think that you guys are going to talk about Epstein in 4 years from now or something like that?
Salacious. It's so salacious.
And yes, to your point about, is Comer just political? Absolutely. We've said this. I mean,
by the way, I will say Bill and Melinda Gates both put out competing interviews, which it's funny. You see the Bill Gates one, to me, he's like, look, I was like, just kind of talking to him about lawn mowing, and it had nothing to do with girls at all. And, it's just so unfortunate, the timing. And then Melinda Gates' interview to NPR was like, he's a scumbag. I mean,
and this is why we got divorced.
This is why we got divorced, and I want the women to get justice. And
are they going to call him in? Hello.
That's.
I'd watch that hearing.
Oh yeah.
What if you had Gates and Musk?
Man, put Lutnick in there too after this weekend.
No, he didn't. At least based on what I've seen, there's nothing.
No, but he's in the
Yeah. You're right.
Okay. Let's take another one. Okay, question for all. Given how much pushback Democrats and Rand Paul gave in regard to Venezuela, why are they relatively silent on Iran?
Say this again. Given how much pushback?
Given all the pushback that Democrats. Well, I think there's a big one. It's called a nuke. I think there's a big difference. Venezuela, we obviously had some oil interest, but I don't think for a lot of people it was at the highest level of their concern. Like Venezuela didn't pose an imminent threat to us per se. There's a big question about Iran's nuclear capability, the stability of the regime, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think there's a bipartisan difference in how you approach the level of threat to our national security and to our well-being and et cetera. I mean, if nukes fall if there's a regime change in Iran, how that affects our national security is, I think, obviously very important. So there's just, I think how you look at those countries matters very differently. And I don't think that there was that level of concern from people with respect to Venezuela's threat. Therefore, they were like, why are you doing this? Why does it matter? Et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, look, I think if you notice, Democrats have been pretty silent on Iran. I mean, I think that this is one of those few issues where everybody on both sides of the aisle on the ideological spectrum sits up in their chair and clears their throat a little harder. It's a real issue, right? Iran's been our enemy for years. They've killed Americans. Go back to the Iranian hostage crisis. I think people, with Epstein, it's politics, right? The Republicans jumped on it in 21 for pure political reasons. Dems are jumping on it now for pure political reasons. You look at Iran and you're just like, whoa, this is a serious issue.
Guys, it's 9:24, but we're going to wrap early today.
Nice.
This is great. Thanks to everyone for watching. We will be back at 8:30.
Wait. It's Wednesday. Sean, what do you got tonight?
Yeah.
Well, you want to talk about the SAVE Act
in
Texas.
You're going to be Roy. Are you getting John Thune on your show?
Oh, no. But Chip Roy is going to be on the show tonight. So you want to talk about a guy, obviously he has been probably the most prominent voice on the SAVE Act. And then there's a lot to talk to about what's going on in Texas that's going to be important.
Rachel, do you have a newsletter you're working on right now? Or
I actually got it. It's funny you asked there, Dan. I got up at 3 a.m. to start working on one, and I thought I was going to send it before the show, but I'm kind of glad I didn't. Because again, it's going deep into the Clinton contempt piece, and I may grab a quote or two from my fellow co-hosts here.
Wait, 3 a.m. Was this one of those things where like you couldn't sleep because you're so excited? You're like, it's like Christmas. I got to get up and just start typing.
Actually, it was the opposite. I thought to myself at about 7 o'clock last night, I said, I can stay up late and write, or I can go to bed early and wake up early.
Yep.
And I chose to do the latter.
I
So,
was in here.
sign up at rachelbade.com, RACHAELBADE.com. It's free and it should be hitting your inboxes, within the next 45 minutes or so. So thanks for asking, Dan. Appreciate it.
Sean, when do you do your best thinking? Not where, when?
I used to be a night guy. It's probably in the last few years shifted. It's all morning now.
Yeah, same here. Between 5 and like 11. My best.
I'm better at night still, but I have to, redo my whole schedule now because of the show, right? So I'm like trying to get on this new, way of thinking, which is like I'm better in the morning. But no, I'm a night person. So
It'll change. Trust me. It'll change.
But the good news is Cozy Earth is just as warm at night as it is in the morning. So you're covered either
I
way.
have my Cozy Earth blanket right here. Was using it when I was writing. So thanks, Cozy
So
Earth.
good.
All right, guys. We will see you tomorrow, 8:30.
Okay.